is Judy Collins, and I am very happy to speaking with Dan Hanlon today. And he's the director of training for Noble Six. And Noble Six is a background screening company, and I think they deal with a lot of different verticals just to make our employees and our customers and our clients feel safe. When I first talked to Dan, that's what I told him. That was one of the nice things, was he really made me feel like he knew what he was talking about, and really was concerned about our safety. So Dan, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Noble Six?
Absolutely. Thanks, Judy. And thanks for having me on today. So Noble Six is one business unit in the Noble Group. We actually have four business units in the Noble Group. We have Noble Backgrounds, Noble Medical, Noble Diagnostics, and Noble Six. So Noble Backgrounds obviously being our background component, Noble Medical being our devices, oral fluid, saliva, alcohol testing, and Noble Diagnostics being our management program. So we manage thousands and thousands of customers, DOT and non-DOT customers across the country, partnered with a lot in healthcare, especially occupational health. And so we manage a lot of programs. We have our own MROs in-house. We have 5 MROs, and partner with labs. Obviously, we have 14,000 collection sites across the country. And Noble Six was something that we created in the last year and a half or so. Tyler Weston being our COO, being former military, started as a company that, and me being 30 years in law enforcement, having that background in security and safety, and especially workplace violence and active shooter concentrations, started Noble Six really as an outreach to say, hey, if you're drug testing, if you're doing other things for backgrounds, it all makes sense to say these are all red flags, obviously, for workplace violence incidents. So looking at your overall safety and security for your company, and we'll go more in depth, but really that's where it all comes down to in the end, is the culture and the climate of your organization via the employees that you deal with every day.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for keeping us all safe. And I think maybe a lot of us, that safety component is in the back of our minds. But I know with you and with Noble Six, that is one of the main objectives. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the red flags that you mentioned that we're not looking at or we're not noticing that are so important to keeping us all safe?
Absolutely. So, and some of the significant red flags are obviously a history of violence, obviously. So, past arrest records, behavior on the job, off the job. We're a big proponent of continuous monitoring. So, not only that background check up front, which is becoming more and more critical. I know there's a lot of pushback in bandbox states and whatnot, not that ask it up front and get that, but you still have time before that, when an offer of employment goes out, to do that, do your due diligence and do that background check. And we'll go into negligent hiring and negligent retention and the push for what the courts are saying, foreseeability. The employer should have known that this person was a bad actor up front. But yes, so background checks being a critical component, and a red flag, knowing the violence of the person, drug arrests and drug use, past and current. We know that when people are on drugs, and after 3 decades in law enforcement, it's not a big stretch to say that it's very difficult for people to get off of drugs. And so they stay in that pathway, and yes, they're able to beat a pre-employment drug test. They know what to do to beat that pre-employment drug test and what they have to do, even if they have to stay dry for a while and away from drugs. They go back into that world, right? So again, continuous monitoring, knowing, have they been arrested in the last week, the last month, what for? That's a huge red flag for an employer to know that this person maybe isn't acting right on the job. Maybe it's influencing their performance, their attitude, their attendance. All those things are put together as red flags. So you look at it, how bullying, harassment, intimidation in the workplace, and violence and mass shootings. You know, Judy, 2/3 of a recent study came out, 2000 to 2013, those that were on a pathway to deadly violence, it was painfully evident when you look at it, they already were acting in a abusive, harassing, and oppressive way in the workplace. Those signs and signals are already there. So it's not anything that we shouldn't already know as employers looking at it. So drug testing, whether it's reasonable suspicion, big proponent I am of random testing as well. I know we have it obviously for DOT, and I know it's an extra ask to say, let's do this for non-DOT. But the world's changed so much, and the world's changed in such a different way. And as we start to look at these lawsuits, and maybe we can go into that with the next segue here, that the paradigm shifting, saying, look, the employers are responsible for what happens with their employees on the job. And if you're not doing your due diligence with background checks, with your drug screening, with other things, that's going to come back. Those are the red flags that are out there. There was one in California, right? Those shootings in the last couple of weeks in California. One of them was on a farm, and they said, well, you always look back and say, well, did you see the signs? Well, of course you do after the fact, right? But he had a history of workplace violence. He already had a history, including threatening to stab somebody and trying to suffocate somebody. He had a history already. So again, do we hire people that are sometimes very difficult? Maybe their backgrounds, and we give them another chance in life? Absolutely. We also know that recidivism rates are about 50% after 2 to 3 years. So do they go back into that world of violence and drug use and bad actions? Absolutely. So we're taking a huge risk when 1 out of 3, basically 1 out of 3 adults in our country have an arrest record, and you're employing these people now, right? You're responsible for them. You brought them in the door. Did you do your due diligence, as what courts are saying? Did you have foreseeability, is what courts are saying? And the lawsuits are really is what is pushing us to say these are red flags that we need to watch out for. We need to be careful of, and we need to be understanding that it's something that we have to be preemptive about up front.
Well, and I think it's so important that people feel at ease. And I love that saying, see something and say something. Don't just see something like someone is behaving maybe erratically and not be able to say something. And I think that goes back to the communication really between all of our recruiters and their staff and contractors they're putting out, because I think everyone needs to know safety is number one. You want to make sure that both your employees and your clients feel like safety is important to you, and you need to take all the steps that you can to support that and really to give that feeling. Dan, I know you have like a wealth of information. Can you please tell us what your contact information is in case someone wants to call you
Sure.
and ask you any questions?
Sure. My cell phone is 414-207-0441. My email is dhanlon, Hanlon, at noblemedical.com. And our website is tngintel.com. And so, again, I think really looking at this from a perspective that we're out there to help you. We're out there to assist you. We do the training for active shooter, active response. We do it functional exercises. We'll review your safety and security plan. We'll review what you're doing. How do you barricade? Where do you barricade? Do you have your trauma kits in those rooms? Because what if somebody is injured? Your AEDs in those rooms. Does you no good to have it in the hallway when the active shooter's coming down the hallway and you're barricading? Are you pre-set up to barricade? Do you do tabletops? Do you do evacuation drills? Do you do some type of pre-planning for your managers and your employees? And then again, under stress, because our stress response is, first of all, we have denial. Everyone denies that something's happening. You can go to any mass shooting and talk to people that survived it. They deny, because that stress response is a dump on them. So how do we mitigate that? One quick lesson is deep breath, combat breathing, in for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds. I preach that it should be something that we do every day when we're driving to and from work, to and from the store. Get in the habit of doing it, because we know, and we can see it right here in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. We're right outside of Milwaukee, where we had the Sikh temple shooting. And that was one where the Lieutenant Murphy practiced that deep breathing, and he did it often. He did it to save his life that day, because all the doctors that worked on him said he would have bled out before he got to the hospital, being shot 14 times, 11 penetrating wounds, but he did the combat breathing. So do that, because that mitigates our stress response, because we're going to lose fine motor skills and gross motor skills at any high stress, whether it's a car accident, natural disaster, a fire, an active shooter. We're going to lose that under stress response. So you have to fight through it. So there's a lot of good tips, Judy, along the way, but really it all revolves around what's your safety and security plan? Where do your vulnerabilities, physical vulnerabilities, and what are your vulnerabilities with who you have on the work floor with you? Knowing your employees. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a manufacturing site, an engineering plant, a business. It doesn't make it an office building, because we have so many people at risk in this society right now, right? So my last in service as a police officer, crisis worker came in from Waukesha County here, and she said, Dan, we have, and she was giving a talk to the class. She said, I talk to people every day, and every day they come into my office and they're in crisis. And she said, invariably, once a month, someone will come in and say, I feel like I'm going to kill somebody. I feel like I want to kill people. So if you take that and you expound onto the greater society of what we have walking around, that's one crisis worker that's dealing with a population of people right here locally. And you can take that and you say, well, what about the people that aren't coming into crisis and talking? And those that are in crisis are saying this. They're thinking about killing people. It's scary, but it's reality in our world that we have thousands of people walking around our society right now thinking about killing people. That's the mental health crisis that we're trying to deal with. And employers are trying to deal with that on the job with workers. So yes, red flags. Do your drug testing, do your background checks, do your continuous monitoring. Look at those employees, know your employees at a deep level. Noble's there to help you to do that. And we have a passion about it because we know that 2/3 are prevented, Judy. 2/3 of workplace violence incidents are prevented by good people that are doing good work. But we need that other third to step up and say, hey, I'm going to confront this person because maybe they are circling the drain. But those red flags are always there. We just don't always have that push to make it relevant.
Well, and also what a great service it would be to your clients if you would go and ask them if they would be interested in having you come and do a training at the work site. Then that just makes, I think, your client feel like you're more of a partner. You're
Absolutely.
not just a vendor, supplying people, but you're interested in the overall good of the company and all of the employees. And so what a great service that that you can extend to some of your clients. And I think the Noble Six, I think that you do help recruiters, I guess, set up that training, correct?
Absolutely. We'll help. We'll do the training. We'll come in. We can do it online or in person. We really like on-site training because I think it's a deeper dive and people have questions. People don't like to confront other people. They don't like the threat assessment, for instance. But basic threat assessment isn't that difficult. Asking people, what did you do last weekend? What do you do for hobbies? What do you do? Um, what are you going to do today after work? Getting to know them at that level, those are common sense leading questions because you're asking where their head is at right now. If they don't have a vision of the future, if they don't have any goals, if they don't think of beyond today, what is that telling you? Talk about a red flag that is evident. It should be evident. Now you partner with everything else that they have going on with their financial problems, their relationship problems, their work problems, their drug problems. That's a point for intervention. Especially if they're saying, I don't have any future. Well, that should be a drop, excuse the pun, drop dead red flag saying this person's really in crisis right now and we need to get them help
That's right.
because that is an ask for help. But again, it's going to go back, and I really think it's happening already. Is these negligent retention and negligent hiring lawsuits. You see the payout at MGM. You're going to see the payout at Uvalde, right? You're going to see the payout at Walmart, the shooting last September. You saw the payout in North Texas where a Spectrum worker came back and killed an 83-year-old grandmother after servicing her account the day before. Came back 24 hours later, killed her, and stabbed her to death and took her wallet and used the credit cards. And Spectrum stopped their employee screening program in 2016, and he lied on his application about his employment, and he already had problems on the job, being disciplined for taking things from people's houses. One over $1 billion, Judy, was awarded recently by a judge in Texas after the jury awarded 7 billion. The judge said, no, we're gonna do $1 billion, so it doesn't get appealed on this. That's the type of lawsuit that these bigger companies are looking at. It's going to destroy a smaller company. So knowing your employees, not hiring the people that are potentially, or at least monitoring them. If they're having problems on the job, off the job, they're getting arrested, they're getting into drugs, test them, have that program available. So those red flags can come up and you can say, hey, this person's not going to be employed by us anymore. Kroger, another one. I think Kroger was in Texas as well back in 2021. Another one it's a massive lawsuit, tens of millions of dollars that they're looking at in that active shooter. Again, huge red flag warning signs that this person was violent, and they retained him as an employee. You can't do it anymore. You just can't. I know it's a tough world as far as who we're hiring right now and who we're bringing in, staffing agencies being at the forefront of it, HR being at the forefront of it. It's difficult. I get it, but you can't just grab someone and put them out there and think that they're okay, because there's a lot of people walking around, like I said before, that are not okay.
That's right. Well, I really do appreciate your time. And yes, everyone give Dan a call, because this is a very important topic. And I think it's close to the hearts of a lot of people, but maybe they are afraid to say something or not sure how they should respond if they do have an employee that may be acting erratically. So, but there is help out there. And
Absolutely.
so we're glad Dan is on our side.
Yeah. Well, after 30 years of doing it, Judy, it's difficult to sometimes push through to employers and make them, they figure every day is a good day, nothing happened, but they're not really focused on what could happen and the potential that they're not seeing, because they're not doing their due diligence. And if it's courts that make that happen, then so be it. I don't think it should be. I think we should do it up front. I know it's a little extra step. I know it's a little bit more work. But again, in our world today, with the increasing violence and the difficulties that we're having, who would want to work at a place that doesn't do it? I guess that's my point. When safety's first and your employees are first, why wouldn't you do some type of monitoring? Why wouldn't you do your background check? No one wants to go on the work floor with someone that has a history of violence or drug use or current drug use. So doing your drug testing, doing those things, that mitigates that risk substantially. It shows you're doing your due diligence, and you're making it a safer workplace. So it all makes sense.
That's right, protecting us all. All right. Well, Dan, stay safe, and then
Yes.
we will catch back up with you and have an update and see what we can do to help people make sure their employees feel safe. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Judy.